You just came out of the event. The big question is, can this really change our relationship with our phones? What do you think?
I think this is a really interesting development. I mean, there are so many chess piece moves we can talk about with this development. And even just to see a guy like Mark Zuckerberg making the kinds of comments tied to phones that we're so often used to discussing when we cover Apple events and Tim Cook and previously with Steve Jobs. Here's my take on things so far. First of all, this seems like a shot at Apple. I mean, what we said earlier in the broadcast was this is not the kind of thing that Apple would allow, because Apple has total control over that experience when you pick up your phone. They want to control that experience. Facebook knows about that. Android gives Facebook the opportunity to have their shot at it. And even just watching some of the demonstrations and this messaging function that they unveiled today feels very much like the messaging option that you've got on an iPhone. So that's the interesting Apple story. Just interesting in general that you see Facebook making this big push with Android, given that there's a lot of competition with Google already, and they know that Google has benefited tremendously with Android in gaining more information about people. I mean, the surge in usage of Gmail and Google Plus because of the success of Android is something that Facebook's very well aware of. Here's an opportunity for them to, if this is widely adopted, gain more access about each Facebook user. And by the way, the fact that they would go with this chat head messaging function in a bigger way is just a reminder that Facebook has a lot of younger competition. There are a lot of very successful messaging apps that are out there right now, and Facebook's trying to stay ahead of the game, maybe block out some of that competition. If people use this in a big way, that would certainly be interesting. And then even the fact that while the focus is on HTC today, a company that needs a partner like Facebook because they're struggling against the likes of Apple and Samsung. An interesting story, but the fact that this is available for now, as you mentioned, on the Galaxy S3, and maybe a tighter relationship with Samsung. Do Facebook and Samsung become stronger allies in a battle against Apple? I mean, just so many storylines, even if there aren't any tangible numbers we can put on what this means. Emily?
You know, I agree, John. I'm really curious about what this means for Apple. Apple, of course, tightly controls the iOS operating system. Corey, would you say this is bad for Apple?
You know, I think actually one of the losers here might be Google. I mean, Google spent all this money developing Android. Yes, they acquired the kernel of what is now Android. But Google's getting further and further pushed back on the phone.
Yet the more people that use Android, the more people that use Google services on Android,
That's
like
the theory.
Gmail, like Maps.
That's the theory, right? But if Facebook's in front and Google's not in front, if people go to messaging through Facebook, not through Gmail, the Google experience, it's something I've been watching for a while. I wonder if the new Samsung phone, for example, that the Galaxy is becoming the brand, not Android. Right now, Facebook is the brand, not Android. And so if the Google experience starts to get pushed back, maybe Google doesn't get the benefit from the big push into Android that they were hoping to get.
Right, so we've seen Amazon, Samsung, and now Facebook getting more control of Google's Android operating system. Paul, what do you think about this Apple question? Who does this hurt more, Google, Apple? Does it hurt them at all?
No, I think Google. I think there's already been a host of sort of rumbling rumors, I suppose, about what Apple's going to do with the next iOS iteration, in terms of being less skeuomorphic and all these other things. But I think one of the things you're going to see is it's going to be much more immersive and task-driven and much less app-driven. And I think that's a foregone conclusion. So in a sense, this is a shot across Apple, but it's something that Apple was planning to make some changes in this direction anyway. I think most of us were anticipating in the next iOS release. So the real problem, as Corey points out, is that you've got this kind of weird symbiotic, parasitic relationship between Facebook and Google/Android, where they're riding on top of the operating system and exploiting happily that it's open source and they're able to do all kinds of interesting things. But by the same token, they're also reliant on it staying the way it is in some sense, so they can create this shell, this immersive interface on top of it. Anything changes, Facebook gets booted off. If Facebook's successful, there's huge incentive for Google to enhance Google Now and make it much more difficult for Facebook to put this new UI in front and hide, Google's Android underneath. So, for now, I think it's a bold move. It's probably a perfect move for Facebook to do. And in a couple of years, I think we'll see all the major UIs look more or less like this, for better or worse. This is where we're headed.
And Paul, in listening to the rest of the press conference, did you get any more clues about how much forking was actually involved here? How much did Facebook actually change the code, the Android code, to produce this home software?
No, and as I said earlier, it's pretty clear to me that something happened because, Mark kind of walked back in his comment, that we didn't have to do anything much, something like that. And then there's this discussion of how, we've really done some close work with HTC on this. So clearly there's something going on. There's going to be something special, bells and whistles, for at least a couple of handset manufacturers and open to others if they want to do the same thing. So I think there's more coming with respect to what they've actually done to Android. I don't believe that it's truly vanilla, and I think, Mark hinted as much in that sort of walk back during the presentation.
All right, now in talking about this whole idea of Facebook's relationship with Google and Apple, I want to bring in Simon Mansell. Again, of course, Google is still #1 when it comes to mobile ad dollars by far. Facebook is a distant second, right? Does this get Facebook closer to Google?
Yeah, I think the more time that's spent in the device, which, if people have downloaded that home screen, the first thing you do when you switch on your phone is going to be Facebook. That's going to help in the medium term increase Facebook's inventory, which means they can sell more space around that inventory and then make more money.
So in a sense, that's bad for Google as well, right?
Yes.
Do you see a scenario in which Facebook could ever surpass Google?
I mean, I think Google's revenue is difficult to surpass because people are using that to actually find things to buy. However, that's a different type of advertiser, more of a direct response type advertiser who wants to sell things. The advertisers who Facebook play very well to are the brands. So people who want to get inside your mind, so when you're in the supermarket, you pick up Coca-Cola instead of Pepsi. And that is the majority of the ad spend. So of the $600 billion ad market globally, most of that is spent on brand advertising. So, Facebook's well positioned, but it's not as measurable as Google because people know when, you've bought something on Google.
Well,
So quickly, how much do you
size-wise-
actually expect this to shake up the mobile ad market?
Well, are they going to put ads in the front? That's an interesting question that is unanswered here. Where are they going to put those ads? And to the point of the size of the companies, I mean, Google is more than 10 times larger. Facebook would have a long way to go to anywhere near this.